Greetings from a blustery day in Abbotsford, and happy birthday to my mother today. So, there you go. Hey, got a hockey game tonight. We have a hockey game every night for at least an 8-day period, and then we'll see what happens after that. As in, those days off, what'll we fill them with? I have ideas. Anyways, so tonight we get into game one between the Islanders and Tampa Bay. And much like yesterday's game one between Dallas and Vegas, there's not really much for me to mention in a preview that I haven't already talked about in the videos where I've done the series preview. So I'll say this. Tampa Bay's had a week off. The Islanders have not. We'll see if Tampa Bay's fresher or if what we saw last night happens again. So last night we saw the Dallas Stars, who didn't take a day off, look fresher against a Vegas team that did take a day off. And no shade towards Peter DeBoer for saying, hey, my guys deserve a day off after all the crap they've been through. But it did feel like Dallas was faster out of the gate. And whether that was related or not, maybe not. Maybe Dallas was just better. But we'll see whether or not Tampa Bay looks fresh, or if the Islanders, having played only a couple of days ago, come into this focused and ready to go. Stamkos won't play the entire series. So this isn't just Stamkos isn't in this game. Stamkos won't play the entire series. I will go ahead and say that since he's not playing in the conference finals, he's not going to play in the Stanley Cup final either. And they're not telling us exactly why, but I would think it's related to every other injury he's had over time. He's going to be an interesting one to watch in the offseason for me, because at some point, if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning, especially if you win a Stanley Cup minus Stamkos and you're looking at cutting costs, right? So I think this'll get interesting if Tampa Bay does actually knock out the Islanders, go on, win a Stanley Cup, and they do it without any need for Stamkos. Be a very interesting development. Yesterday they announced that Matt Dumba won the King Clancy Trophy. I know. Everybody hates Dumba, or people don't hate Dumba. There's this whole movement that's still going on, and it is way outside of the hockey realm as well. Yesterday, or I think it was yesterday, Britain's Got Talent had an issue as well where people were complaining about activism on Britain's Got Talent and this, and I understand the upset. And I do my best to kind of see both sides of that argument. That's why I don't talk about it in videos, because I do my best to see both sides of an argument. And yeah, we talk about hockey on here, and I'm going to do my best to keep it there. And I will say this. Dumba raised $500,000 to support Minnesota businesses affected by protests. So this is not they voted last week situation. He has been raising money, and he has been a big part of the community work in Minnesota while he's been there. So, anyways, all the best to him. I know he's taking a lot of heat right now, and again, these are 2020. I just blame everything on 2020. I think once we reach January 1st of 2021, just all right, everything's okay. 2020 was this giant nightmare. None of it ever happened, and we maybe never speak of it again. All right, moving along. Gabriel Landeskog. So he took that skate cut, and it was friendly fire. It wasn't like somebody, in a predatory manner hit him with a skate. It's one of those fluke things that happens. It was expected he was not returning for the entire playoffs, no matter how long Colorado had stayed in the playoffs. So that makes you wonder how he was able to return in the third period of that game. He didn't play for long. He didn't play very many shifts. But it does make you wonder how he was able to return if the injury turned out to be that bad, that the cut was that deep, that they said, no, he can't play the rest of the playoffs. That's where I have questions regarding training and medical, where it's like, wait, if you guys figured that out after the game, why couldn't you figure it out during the game? Because I would think that skating on it, if it's that bad, could make it that much worse. But hopefully he's good to go for the start of next season, and we get into that whole debate. I'm starting to see all the posts again, like, we're not going to have a next season. What are people talking about? Right. And a lot of it is the same argument that we weren't going to have a playoffs either. So, all right. Anyhow, so Landeskog, hopefully he's okay and he's good to go when we hit next season, whenever that is. Elias Anderson, remember him? Remember he used to play on the Rangers, and then he didn't? And then he got mad. He went home. He's playing pretty well. In a preseason game for HV71, he had 2 goals and 3 assists. He has 5 goals in 6 preseason games. That should raise his trade value a bit. I mean, he's still not going to be a 1-for-1 with Puljujärvi. That's the trade that I've seen everywhere for like a year now, it feels. Puljujärvi for Anderson. I mean, no. Puljujärvi has a much higher ceiling than Elias Anderson, I think. So, it does help the Rangers if they're still looking to move him, and I believe they are. Whereas the Oilers with Puljujärvi, it seems like that relationship is warming up a little bit. At the very least, things are thawing out somewhat. And maybe we do see Puljujärvi back with the Oilers when the next regular season starts. That'd be bizarre, wouldn't it? Especially if he got off to a slow start. Then what? So if Puljujärvi gets off to a slow start, do they trade him? Does he get mad if they end up having to send him to the minors or put him in the press box? Like, it'd get interesting, wouldn't it? So, the reason I'm wearing a Penguins jersey, because they made me happy. Jussi Riikola has signed a 2-year extension worth a $1.15 million cap hit, so $1 million for the upcoming season and $1.3 million for the year after. I like Riikola, and I know people are gonna be like, you just like his name. It's part of it. I also think he's a decent number 7 defenseman. I mean, he's not an everyday top 4. He's not going to be an everyday top 4. But if he's their number 6, they can do worse. They have done worse. Over their history, they have done worse. I'm just thinking back to the early 90s, late 80s, mid 80s, and some of the defensemen that were in the league back then. And there were some defensemen that the skating aspect that we talk about now wasn't as big of a deal back then. Back then, sometimes it was just, well, he's really big. He can fight, so... Hey, not a great skater, but... I mean, and there were fewer of them amongst the defensemen than the forwards, but when it's a defenseman, it's more noticeable, because that's your last line of defense in front of the goaltender. But, so Riikola's sticking around a couple years. Good call. And I would expect that he'll probably be amongst the many who are going to end up playing in Europe, if possible, before the NHL returns. European leagues, you're welcome. The NHL delaying the start of its season to December means that European leagues, which are still running, they're going to get a lot of influx of talent. That's the interesting thing too, is that all of the other leagues are running, and the idea that, well, the NHL after these playoffs are done, they'll just shut it down until when? So that's the question mark. And I know we have questions about, the Canadian border that I mentioned in yesterday's news video. And yeah, that's a worthy conversation to have. But you do run the risk if you shut things down, especially with, and I'll come back to the Dumba thing for a minute, with there are a lot of fans who are not happy about some of the directions that this league is taking. And then you take it out altogether, you're going to have a hard time getting those ratings back. And you're not going to get a good deal from American broadcasters when they're saying, well, wait, why should we bid on your product when you didn't play and all the other leagues did? And so we don't think that you're worth a lot more than what NBC was paying for you last time. So that's the problem. Anyhow, one question that's been going through my head, that's why it's in blue, because it's not technically news. But seeing what Dallas did, seeing what the Islanders have done, seeing what the Flyers have done, seeing what happened to Pittsburgh against Montreal, there's a lot of trap hockey being played, and it's a new version of the trap. It's not the same as the old version of the trap. It's heavy hitting, it's keeping the puck to the outside, it might be throwing in 2 forecheckers instead of 1, but it's working. A lot of the teams that are out, a lot of the teams that got upset, either in the play-in round or the first round, a lot of the teams that got knocked out are ones that play that freewheeling, fast style of hockey, the offense, and their defense is kind of not necessarily all that great. The Canucks are a good example of a team that scored a ton of goals this year in games where they won sometimes, and they might allow a lot of shots, but hey, it was a lot of fun to watch. Well, they're out. And part of how Vegas knocked them out was heavy hitting, keeping them to the outside, keep shots against down, don't allow very many goals at all, if any. And here we are. I think we're on the precipice of a new... It's not going to be a dead puck era, but it's going to be similar. And we may very well see a lot of low scores, because other coaches going into next season are going to look at what coaches that succeeded this year did and say, well, that's how you win now. So that's how the neutral zone trap ended up taking over in the mid 90s. Wasn't that it was easy, it was there were two things. One, you had expansion, which diluted the talent pool. And then two, you had the New Jersey Devils win a Stanley Cup playing that way. And other teams tried to emulate it. And when you had teams that were playing that freewheeling style, and I think of the Detroit Red Wings, they would get knocked out by teams that would shut them down. And it's easier to shut talent down than to make, guys who aren't necessarily the most talented players, talented players. So if you're a no-name team, if you're a team that might have one star but you don't have a ton, just shut them down. Shut everything down. So I do think we may be heading into a scoring drop for next year. And it'll be interesting to see if teams adapt and if the league tries to counter it. So if coaches are going out there and playing a neutral zone trapping style, are they going to change it? I remember things got so bad in the 90s that there were arguments being made by some pundits of we should have illegal defense the way they have in other sports, where you can't have that formation on the ice, and it never happened because how would you police that? Really, honestly, how would you do that on ice? No. But how will the NHL try to counter that? Because the NHL loves offense and big highlight reel goals. Coaches don't. There's a coach that really hates the highlight reel goals, and it's the one that got scored on. And that tape, they're showing their team for different reasons than we might be watching it in a highlight reel. So yeah, that's the eternal battle, is that coaches want to take the offense out and make it a defensive battle, and the NHL and I think the players want to go out there and play a lot of offense. And again, for coaches, they're just trying to keep their job. And when they see what's helping other guys keep their jobs and how winning hockey looks, they go, well, it may not be pretty, but that's how we have to do it if we're going to win. All right, the KHL. KHL is honoring lives lost in the locomotive plane crash, which was 9 years ago. 9 years. And there were some big names on that flight. And that was, Dimitra. That was Sekarash was another one, Lubomir Sekarash, and others. And again, it's a lot, so I don't have all the names on here, but it is nice that they're honoring the lives that were lost. So the KHL is going as well, and so I think we'll see some NHL players going over to the KHL to play temporarily too. Maybe from playoff teams once they've been home with their families for a while, they're like, hey, we'll go over to the K. Unless, and this is the asterisk, unless the NHL says no. Unless the NHL says we don't like their safety procedures, and so no. And I'm not sure, again, how all of that is going to work. There's so many things that need to be worked out here between the NHL, the NHLPA, and all that other stuff. And I want to end on a Canuck note here that Troy Stecher, through his agent, has said he wants to remain a Canuck. I have no doubt in my mind. You look at the joy of Troy Stecher after they knocked out St. Louis. Yes, he wants to stay. He wants to stay in Vancouver. He sees himself as a Canuck. If history's taught me anything, there are plenty of players who see themselves as Vancouver Canucks that eventually they're out. And I immediately think of Cliff Ronning as one that was a perfect fit in Vancouver, and then it just... he was gone on the free agent market because they didn't think he was worth $1 million. And so Stecher, I think if he's going to come back, he's probably going to have to take a pay cut from the $2.2 million he made this year. I don't know. Jim Benning is really unpredictable when it comes to contracts, when it comes to who he's going to keep, who he's going to let go. I have no idea. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and whether or not Stecher returns. I'm fine with Stecher returning on that third pairing. Doesn't bother me. They do need to upgrade their defense somewhat, but I'm not sure that Stecher is the problem. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.